Welcome to the show, guys. This is the first time I'm using this studio as a studio, and I got my good friend Eric here. Eric and I go way back. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you were my first guest ever.
And my first podcast. It works out really good.
I remember Joe Rogan said something that he was talking about. He just got on a video or on a chat with somebody, and it was funny, and everybody laughed, and that's where his whole podcast started. So maybe the same thing will happen here.
There you go.
But remember, we met a long time ago, right? Doing from Schutzen up at Anacapa.
Yep.
Right, and I remember that you were really good at working dogs, and you had a dog back then named Tazzy, right?
A little pit bull.
And she was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. How long did you have her? How'd you get it? How'd you get her?
I was at dinner with somebody, and we were happening to talk dogs, and he's like, "Oh, I breed dogs. I'm like, "Oh, really? I train dogs. And so we just started talking. I went over there and looked at him, and his father had just passed away like that week or the week before, and he kind of needed money, and I didn't have a dog, and he sold me the dog, and it worked out like that, and we became friends. We're still friends to this day. But and she ended up being just like one of the best dogs I've had.
Ever.
She was awesome.
And how old was she when you got her?
She was 8 weeks.
She was a pup. Yeah. And did she have any come from any training lines or anything like that?
No, he was a breeder. He had hunting lines, so they were hunting dogs, and they might have even had a little Patterdale splashed in there back in the day. And so they were they had a ton of natural aggression and prey drive, but I love the balance of it, and she brought everything to the table. And as a matter of fact, which made it harder for me to train because she didn't want to play tug with me. She took biting very seriously. And anytime a helper got in front of her and he tried to coach her, she's like, "What am I doing here? Aren't we supposed to fight?" So, it taught me a lot. That dog taught me probably the most out of any dog I've had.
Wow. And you had her for a long time.
Yeah, she died at 9, I believe. She had some pancreatic thing going on.
What a bummer.
Yeah.
What a bummer. I'd never seen, later you talked about the whole band dog thing and all that stuff, but I never even knew about that. You did a lot with the band dogs.
Yeah, I actually had a breeding program going back in the day, like maybe mid to late 90s. I had bought an American Bulldog off of, it was a recycler at the time. I guess it would be equivalent to Craigslist. Yeah. And there was controversy because American Bulldogs are generally white. This dog was chocolate in color, and his mom was black, but she was bred from Kyle Sims' yard off a dog named Freddy Krueger, who's a very famous dog. And I have actually competed against with Kyle actually as the judge, and he didn't give me any points or anything. He actually was a little embarrassed because the dog was the color, but he was one of the best dogs there. Wow. So everybody was calling it a band dog. I went to a show up in Northern California and met a bunch of people up there, and one of the guys was Joe Lucero, who bred band dogs. He had a specific band dog line and a dog named Jaws that was famous, and all this stuff. So, and they kind of looked similar because they were the same color, and we became friends. And then I just started going down that road. I got away from the American Bulldog, and I bred him to another Mastiff. So a band dog's basically a Bulldog and a Mastiff cross. So you're getting the tenacity of the Bulldog and the size and a lot of other characteristics of the Mastiff.
So a band dog, is it like it's always a Bulldog crossed with a Mastiff?
Originally it was a Neo and a Pit. Okay. And then over the years, everybody's mixed this and that. And basically it's there's even herder and pressa band dogs, or herder and pit bull band dogs, so maybe a Malinois or Dutch Shepherd and a pressa, or so they started crossing the lines. Now the name band dog is more generalized, right? But it's basically a Gladiator type breed, bred to a pit bull. It's got to have pit bull in it, I think. Okay,
it's got like a Mollisers in it, right? So, more of that. Yeah. But that in that sport, they're not really doing like IPO with those dogs, right? Or are they doing PSA, or what are they doing?
There's a few PSA dogs, and there's a few people out of Manson family band dogs. They got it in the hands of Ron Marshall, who's one of my mentors in training from early on that I met through the pit bull world. And he's got some titles on some of the band dogs. Wow. And there's been a few here and there, but they're more like catch dogs they're all around purpose dogs. So personal protection, you could do sport with the right ones, and they catch hogs and you know, things like that. But you know, a lot of them are more hype than anything else. You know, they look good, and there's a market for them. So, do
those dogs do really well, like compared to like Mals or Shepherds or anything like that?
The right ones, you know, there's some good ones on the East Coast through Misfit and James Guillory, and those guys are they got some stuff. They crisscrossed a couple different breeds, and they got some great dogs that can compete with any of the Shepherds, and they're harder dogs. Their pain tolerance is better. Their tenacity is better. Their fight, I don't know if there's a thing called fight drive, but their willingness to engage and stay committed is better, you know, through pain and other obstacles.
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of times if you really do the research on the whole breeding of the dogs, the Shepherds weren't protection dogs early on. I think all the Molosters were really bred for as sentry dogs early on.
Right.
And they've lost sight of it. I mean, I think now it's not even looked at. A lot of people look at it and say, well, why would you use a dog like that for a protection dog when that's really what they started out as?
Right.
Shepherds were just Shepherds.
Yeah. You know, with sport, I think it confuses the lines between a true protection dog and, you know, a fun dog to go compete with in various sports. Yeah. And obviously the Malinois and Shepherds, they're extremely intelligent and they do the work. They got good balance of drives generally, you know, but we've seen both sides of, you know, every side of the coin. And, you know, it's just, I think the sport kind of skewed the lines for protection work, you know. Right. But you can do both if you got the right dog and the right trainer and you got the right plan.
You're saying on the band dogs?
I'm saying any dog.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But what I found is being a trainer and being first introduced through pit bulls and band dogs and the bulldogs. Yeah. And now having Malinois and German Shepherds. Yeah. They're two totally different dogs to train in the bite work, you know.
So talk about that. Like, what's the difference? Because that's a really interesting point. A lot of people have just trained Shepherds, and you're one of the unique people, and I think you're a fantastic decoy and handler, trainer as well. What's the difference in those dogs?
I think it derives from the reason why they're biting. I believe that the bulldogs and the some bulldogs, like more like pit bulls, they really enjoy the fight part of it. Yeah. And if they're balanced, that's good. But usually, I mean, it's just different animal as far as like the pressure you put on them, how you get them to counter, and how you get them to engage. And instead of being like a rabbit, you want to almost be like a foe. And a real they really tend to progress when you put more pressure on them before the bite, as opposed to, say, if you did that to a shepherd, you know, a young dog, you might get them started off the wrong way. You know, every dog's wired different. Genetics is going to tell you the picture of the dog and what it's about. But
so when you say that, like when you put the pressure on, I from what I've seen, I mean, I do think pits and mollishes do enjoy that. They're in that fight. I think the mals and the shepherds are really into the chase game.
Yeah, and more so like mals, I've noticed, is they love to bite something. Yeah, put something in their mouth. Yeah, and you know, being a police dog trainer, I don't go with aggression as much as I would with, say, a off-breed, a pit bull or something. I try to bring out more aggression, and I think that's where their wheelhouse is.
In the mals, or
no, with the pit bulls and the band dogs and those type of dogs, I tap into their aggression. Okay, and then I balance it out in the fight. So once the dog does get to the bite, I try to figure out what's going to make him bite me, and then I balance it out in the fight. Okay. So a shepherd, I might have to use more prey and try to get away. Right. And boom, once they get me, then we can engage. And another dog, a pit bull or a band dog, I might have to put some pressure on him, like we're about to really fight, and he commits through that. And having both of those experiences with the two different breeds, I can intertwine those things. And,
So when you like, that's a really important component, and that can be the same on a pit mix or a shepherd. That sometimes you might have to put more of a defensive drive, or more pressure, or more prey into the dog. But you're saying, as a general rule, and I think I agree with you on that. I mean, I don't know much about the pits with that, except for what I've seen the bad behavior in fighting. But in seeing that pressure, that they'll really push against that pressure. Yeah. Right. Like they'll stay in it. Where a shepherd, at some point, with enough pressure, they'll just kind of back off. Yeah. And the pits are pretty much the opposite, or the mollisters, or the band dogs, or whatever you want to call them, right? Yeah.
So, and I think around 7 months old in a pit, if you tap into that defense drive and you just flick a switch and you let them know that the human can be a bad guy, and you touch them once or twice and they react appropriately, then I just touch on it and leave it alone, and that switch is.
Give me an example of that, like when you touch on it. Not that I really want to stress. I don't want people taking their dogs and making them into a fight dog. But I just want to talk about for people who know.
Right. So I'm talking like put them on a short tie back. The handler may leave, and I just come up, and now it's a confrontation between me and the dog. And I wouldn't do that to a shepherd necessarily, because it might fold him, and he wouldn't recover as well as a pit would. I wait till they're way older, and I generally wouldn't take that approach with them. But with a pit or a band dog or something with fight in it, like a fighting breed, a gladiator breed, you got to kind of flick that switch once, and then once it's switched, once the switch is flicked, then with a good dog with good genetics, it's going to stay that way. But I want to make sure that the dog's stable before all that. It's not going to become a menace to society or something like that.
What do you see with the dogs? Like, do you see a different maturity level? Like in some, like certain dogs, like Rottweilers, are really slow to mature. Do you see certain genetics in certain kind of dogs that makes them mature much more slowly?
I do with the Mastiff. Any kind of Mastiff influence, especially Neo and things like that. I've had dogs that didn't mature till they were 3. Yeah. And they're just puppies and goofy and stuff like that until they were about that age.
I think it's important. People don't get that. Like, I think shepherds mature pretty quick. I think for some reason they tend to, but
I think that's another thing though, is the dogs that show you that super talent at a young age, they get rushed through the system and they get too much too fast, and they put pressure on them, and they fizzle out later in life, and they don't really kind of, you got to kind of balance it all out.
Yeah. Do you think that's a component that's really overlooked? Yeah. Right.
My theory is, and what I've done with my dogs, is I'll do all the prey work, and if I'm coaching somebody, and I like them to do all the prey work and drive and having fun and engagement, get them to counter and deeper, teach them how to the mechanics of the bite during play and engagement on tugs and rags and leather rags and stuff. And then once the dog's mature, I come into the picture as an adversary, and it just brings everything together, you know, in the right time, and they can handle it. They know these feelings. They know how to deal with those feelings that they're having a little bit better than if, you know, I was the guy who taught them the tug and all that stuff. And then you got to kind of get them past that. You might even have to go a little deeper into the defensive side to get them to switch over. And I don't know.
So you think moving them from the owner building that prey drive, building that bite, getting that confidence into the dog is one component, and then introducing the other person, the decoy or the person that might be the bad guy, makes it more easy on the dog to understand that picture?
I think the genetics of the dog will dictate that, but at the same time, I think also your end goal for the dog would. If you're going more sport oriented and you know you have specific tasks that you have to do within that sport, I think start the dog off as young as possible doing that stuff with the decoy, with as many decoys as you can. But at the same time, having the owner, you know, playing with the dog and teaching the bite mechanics as well. But if you're going a personal protection route or maybe a police dog side of things, I like to see the dog mature and throw him straight into the fire. But he already has the mechanics built by the handler, and then the bond is there, and you know, there's no controversy when I step into the picture. It's you know.
Talk about that for a second, because you do a lot you've done everything from competition sports to police work. I know you work for police departments. What is the difference genetically, right, at the core of the dog through breeding and through evolution, through genetics, that differentiates, let's say, a sport dog from a dog that can do police work?
Well, I think that that's a tough one because, you know, I mean, there's dogs that can cross train. You can get, I think, Schutzen and sports like that, and even French ring. Jimmy Van Hoove gets dogs that are French ring trained, and I know my friend Joe does as well. And we turn them into personal protection dogs or police dogs. So I think the genetics of the dog kind of dictates where you can go with it. Right. But I think if you do the sport work with it, and then you transfer it over. I think Schutzen was like basically a prerequisite before they used to get Schutzen 3 dogs and turn them into police dogs. Right. Now I think there's specific breeding programs just for police work and things like that. But the genetics are the key, and actually each dog is different, so you can't just wrap it up into one package and say this is it. But
it's often done. Right, like people think it's A, B, and C. Right,
I'm seeing that a lot these days with personal protection dogs, executive protection dogs. There's not that many out there that are genetically gifted to be good with the family. And you know, actually do their job if they need it to. I mean, I equate that to maybe giving somebody a gun with blanks in it or with real bullets. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can go into a fight with that. Or you know.
I mean, it's real bullets when you're dealing with a dog. I just don't understand why people don't take that more seriously. And the dog, I think a lot of times you take a dog that's a good Schutzen dog, and we've done protection dogs together, or a good sport dog or whatever. There's that line that when it gets real, it's freaking real. Like, you know, like the person coming in is not going to give you the bite and then work you a little bit. I mean, that guy's gonna try to kill you and you know, take you apart.
And usually the outs go out the window. This, you know, you used to out. I don't know. The first time you never did that.
But you know, it's funny. People talk about that. That's a good thing to touch on. They say that, you know, these dogs. This guy got torn up by this dog, and the dogs are supposed to be trained to out. You know, like. The drive, it's like when you're in the rage of a fight, and dogs are in that. This guy's smacking the hell out of the dog, he's kicking the dog, punching the dog, and the dog's not letting go. And people aren't understanding, you know, why does the cop have to choke the dog off of him, right? I mean, it's so overlooked.
Especially if it's a young dog, his first or second bite. I mean, there's that gray area, and it doesn't translate over. The more they get experience, the better they are at doing what they're trained to do, right? Because it's not new to them anymore. That the taste of blood, the screaming, like you said, I try to emulate that as much as possible in my work. the screaming and flopping around and becoming weaker as the dog gets stronger, all this stuff. And it just doesn't equate to the actual real thing.
But you also put a lot of pressure on the dog when you got a strong dog. I've seen you do it. Like you get on the ground and you start hitting them in a way that builds their confidence and pushes them through that level. And I think that's something that doesn't happen as much in the sports,
right?
Because it's overlooked. It's not necessary, right?
I say, with the social media and things, there's a lot of decoys that are seeing other decoys do things, and there's a lot of information being passed, and there's seminars and things. It's almost trendy now for people to do the groundwork some people don't know why they're doing it or why they're marking the behavior with a scream or an ow or oof and whatever. But the ones that do are changing the game, really.
Yeah. What would be some of the things that frustrate you when you see it? Because everything frustrates me when I see it. But like with protection dogs mainly, what do you think the big flaws are now? Because I know you watch stuff on the internet and see it as well. I
think that people selling protection dogs that are just biting equipment is probably the most frustrating thing to me. I can see through it. I can see what the dog's thinking and why he's thinking it. For the most part, there's always the outliers that throw you off. So that was a surprise. But they're selling people these dogs biting sleeves and suits when it's just a giant tug to the dog. Right. You throw that to the side, and will he really bite you? I doubt it.
And I think that's a big piece. Like people don't get that the dog is totally specific on equipment. And and moving them. So what do police departments do, for example? I mean, obviously, if they get a dog that's a decent dog, do they work hard to get them to bite? Lewis and I always talk about this.
Right.
How do you get them to finally bite an arm or a leg or whatever?
Well, now that there's different ways to do it. I had a discussion with a gentleman this weekend about it, and he does things different than I do. But my dogs all have engagements, live engagements. Usually on the first time they're given the opportunity. I don't do a ton of hidden work, hidden sleeve, hidden suit. I do some muzzle work. To proof that, and then I don't do a lot of prosthetic stuff. I'll touch on it maybe once with a rubber, prosthetic arm or leg, but once you do it once, it's pretty much done, in my opinion. I just try to build the dog as confidently. We do a lot of scenario stuff, a lot of passive stuff. So he'll find me in a building, hidden under a bed, and not trying to. I don't make the dogs react. I think from the beginning, I make the dog activate me, rather than me activate the dog and try to jump around and get him to go. And a lot of that is plays out in the end. He learns that he's the one pushing the behavior, and I'm not trying to extract it from him.
Do they fail out? Do a lot of them fail out?
I've had a couple that I told the guys to get a new dog because to me it wasn't, but it went to another department and they have live bites and it's doing good for them. I like a little harder dog. I don't like soft dogs or anything. If I could throw a box when he even shudders on his way in, I don't really want to see that. I mean, it's an officer's life that's at stake, and the dog's life as well. If he doesn't commit to it. So any stutter in that, I just don't like to see it.
Come out with your hands up where we can see him over the dog back in there. Slowly where we can see you. Nice video camera. I like it. That's solid. Come on out. Keep your hands where we can see him. So I want to talk about that because a lot of dogs do, like you hear these stories about these police dogs get knifed and stuff like that. And I had a guest on, I think like a couple of weeks ago, who talked about like these vests for the police cams, which is such a great charity.
Yeah.
How dangerous is it for the dogs? Like, what do you see as far as, I mean...
It depends on the policy of the department, actually. There's a lot of departments that throw dogs into the fire, you know? I mean, like, into situations where we would never send a dog. It's a containment situation, up in attics, things under houses, things like that, where, you know, we know the guy's there. We're going to throw some gas under there, and he's going to come out, you know? The dog already found him. No need to send the dog under there, you know, things like that. Actually, we're not training... Yesterday we didn't train because our officers are up in Sacramento at a funeral for the canine officer and the canine that got shot up there recently.
Oh yeah,
that was, I don't know the exact details on that deployment and why it went south, but I don't know. You know, I think the training and the scenario basis that we do and put them in different scenarios and make them think through it. You know, I try to make those officers really think about, should I send my dog here? And to trust your dog. Is there somebody there? Is there not somebody there? You know, and just really training is the bottom line to the differentiation between dogs dying and not. I think, you know, but there's always people out there that are trying. You know, it's getting crazier as we, you know.
Yeah, sadly enough. I mean, society's crazy. What's the situation? Do all departments have a standard policy on, like, let's say there's obviously an active shooter? Would they send a dog on an active shooter?
I don't think so. Our policies are pretty much, if the guy has a gun, we're not going to send the dog. Good. Probably if he has a knife, probably not either.
Yeah.
You know, because we'll just wait him out. You know, or figure out another way to get to him. You know, but sometimes you don't know if the guy's got a knife or a gun, and you know, you send your dog in, and you know, there's a lot of departments that are going to bark and holds now, which I think is wrong in my opinion. I just think anytime you're putting gray area or telling a dog to pump his brakes and think before he engages, a lot of it's politically motivated because they just don't want people. It looks bad for them or their department, but you're putting these obstacles in front of these dogs that are just like going to cost them their life, or maybe an officer's life, you know. And there's just policies in place. But to answer your question, every department's different. What they do in Northern California is a lot different than what we do down here, and even Simi Valley compared to Beverly Hills is different. Yeah.
So with the bark and hold thing, like, I mean, I know from Schutz and stuff like that. What's the logic? Like, why would you send a dog in and then bark and hold somebody?
I like a dog if he can't get to the guy, bark obviously and alert that he's there. Bark. But I would never send a dog if the guy's accessible to bark personally. Yeah. But you know, every department has their own different policy. I like out in guard possibly, or out in recall. You know,
explain that. Explain what does that mean?
So if the dog's on a bite and he outs, and I can either keep him there and guard the guy.
Okay.
But I wouldn't necessarily do that for police work necessarily. Right. I would want the officer hands on, take the dog off as the arrest team comes in and arrest the bad guy. You want the dog. I want positive control of that guy the whole time until the dog's off. We take him out.
Would you do that for the protection of the dog more than anybody?
The dog, and there's a lot of reasons, because you know the guy's not. He could come alive. You never know what he can grab or do whatever. I want dog on the bite. Arresting team comes in, holds the guy down, gets him, take the dog off, and then you know, he's safe. He's watching in case the guy does get up and run or whatever happens. You know, we got it.
Yeah, that's huge.
Everything. But I mean, outs are good. We do practice them, and they do them. But it's just it's a dangerous thing, you know. Yeah. And also, sometimes it's not as clean as you would hope it to be in training, you know. Yeah. You got more holes in a person than need be. Yeah. You know.
But I remember Lewis used to always talk about Reavers, when Reavers went to the police, the courts, and was saying that this is a less lethal way of controlling somebody. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, I mean, nowadays a cop can't do anything really. I mean, their hands are tied, which is so pathetic.
Right.
You know, they're protecting people, and you know, then everybody talks about the one or two bad cops. I mean, you know, you're talking about people who are giving their lives. I've had so many friends of mine who are cops who say, you know, if you needed me, I would give you CPR while I'm shot.
Right.
These guys are giving their lives, and then, you know, they're getting criticized, which just pisses me off. What drew you into that work? Like, why did you want to do it?
I always was into the protection side. I started with personal protection and got into the sports side of things with PSA and other working pit bull championships and things like that. And the mentors that I had growing, you know, throughout the process, I was built around aggression, you know, everything. Instead of prey, I was kind of the opposite, you know, and so I learned how to cultivate aggression in a dog appropriately and balance it out. And so I love the decoy work. I love the dogs, and my daughter and I were going out. She was 3 at the time. She's 11 now. And, we were going out to get some pizza on a rainy night, and there was police had a desk set up selling little, stuffed police canine dolls, raising money for their foundation. And I said, hey, who does your decoy work? And they're like, oh, we just switched companies. We haven't even started yet. Here's their number. Why don't you call them? So I called this guy named Steve Holiday, and I got a interview over the phone, and they hired me. A company called VCSI who's no longer in business. They government contracts and all kinds of crazy stuff. But anyways, so I started with Simi Valley, and then Beverly Hills came on board, and UCLA, ATF. And through those experiences, I got to work with a lot of military people, special forces from the UK, Canada, and our Navy SEALs a couple times. And I got to know the trainer, Mr. Haggerty, and he's you know, just branched off from there. And then apparently they like my work, so I stuck around. I worked under a guy named Dave Stambaugh, who's an ex-LAPD canine handler, who was basically, it was me, a guy named Bob Bloor, who's an ex-Beverly Hills canine handler. So I did the decoy work, Bob did the detection, and Dave kind of oversaw everything, and, you know, scenarios, like crazy good scenarios and things like that. And so Dave retired and moved up, I think, to Idaho, and now it's Bob and I holding things down, and, you know, I'm loving it. And I've worked for other departments and, you know, other trainers, and since then, but we have our tight little group, and we. So
it's just the two of you guys doing it? Wow, that's pretty cool.
And, you know, political reasons or whatnot, departments have left, so now it's just Simi Valley now, and we're down to 3 dogs. I was working 10 plus dogs night, and it was an 8-hour shift, and I was the only decoy. But, you know, I got tons of experience doing that, and I got to practice on so many dogs, not only dogs but handlers, how to communicate to them, how to you know, help them communicate with their dogs, and it incorporates obedience during bite work. So yeah, it really sharpened my skills quite a bit.
Do you prefer to do that or the sport dog stuff?
I love the police dog stuff, but I like building dogs, confidence. You know, any dog, if you know, if I'm working a dog, I'm going to try to maximize that dog's confidence and make him the most strong dog he can be, you know, beating me up. And I'm going to try to feather in that aggression and, you know, do things the way I do it.
When do you usually start seeing the dogs for police work? At what age?
That's it. They get them about a year and a half, they say. I think there's been a couple younger ones slip through the cracks. So that's part of the problem in the whole thing too, is they get straight off the boat, you know, the airplane from Europe. They're kept in a kennel. The department goes up there, picks the dog they want. They go to a 5-week, now it's 5-week trainer's course. We live up there for 5 weeks. Rush the dog through. Their main focus is the outs, which I think is wrong backwards, you know. So I got to fix all these things, you know, when they finally come back to me, and you know, they're mine for the next 5-10 years or however long they're.
Why do they import so many dogs? Like, what's the reason for that?
There's a lot of good breeders here, but I just think that's just the trend and the way it is. I mean, that's and unfortunately, I believe the USA gets a lot of the leftovers because there's, you know, China. There's all the competing countries that are going to pay 10 times more for their dogs, and we get. That's why I said the age. Sometimes they're selling us younger dogs, or, you know, and they'll bite the sleeve or they'll bite the suit. But the thing about that is the dogs are just kept in a kennel, brought out to work, kept them. So now they're like maniacs. There's no foundation, and it's there's a lot of work to be done at a young dog. So, but then I see at around 3 years of age, they start to solidify, and their aggression comes in, and they become who they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Do most departments contract out the training, or do any of them do it in their in house or whatever you want to call it?
A lot of people, it works both ways. And that's what I think. What I'm seeing a trend now is there's a lot of sport trainers or outside department trainers that are coming in and helping the police departments actually train their dogs in the way that we do in sport and different things, because it was basically ex-canine handlers becoming trainers, taking over the department, and taking over the training, and the training was subpar. And there's a lot of nuances that were dropped in that, that we bring to the table as civilians, that we really study our craft, and we get out in front of different dogs. And now, instead of just yanking, cranking, frying dogs, we're using motivation and toys and even food to get them to engage with the handler more,
It's so important. I mean, just because the dog has no choice but to do the job. Yeah. But I think most of them are happy with it, don't you think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, can't imagine a happier job.
Yeah. No, they like it.
Yeah. What
good ones.
When you were young, did you study martial arts or anything, or did you?
A little Hapkido. I rolled around a couple of dojos and doing jiu-jitsu here and there, but nothing that I stuck to.
But you talked earlier about your experience when you was that your first dog, the lab?
My first dog was a mutt named Sargi. He was just a little mutt. He ran away when we were getting our pool built. But then my first real dog was a Rottweiler. Okay. And I learned a lot with him, but I didn't train him much. And then the American Bulldog Harley was kind of my first dog that I actually trained.
How old were you there?
20s, I guess.
Okay. But as a young kid, did you remember a dog when you were like 1, 2?
I do. I remember Sargi. Yeah, okay. He was our dog, and then we had another one called Blackie because it was black. And they were just dogs.
And Sargi ran away. That's when he ran away.
Yeah, because they took down the wall to get a tractor back there, and then he just kind of took off, and we never found him. But and then once I got into the American Bulldog thing, it introduced me to people like Al Banuelos and Joe Lucero, and those guys who were like really into Al Banuelos is a legend in out here anyways. And I just kind of patterned my thinking based on what he's doing. He was known to be aggressive and like powerful and as a decoy, and I wanted to be like that. And but if you're doing it right and you can when to ease up and put it on, it's an art form, man. It's very satisfying when I'll go into a trainer who's a top level trainer and I'll work their dog and they appreciate my work, or and I'm making a difference in their program or their dogs. It's like I think that's what makes it worth it for me these days.
I mean, looking back at it, don't you see it like you did Hapkido? I mean, maybe you didn't excel in it extremely, but you did it. Don't you see that similarity? Like I see dog training and martial arts, it's like so the same. Right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the Hapkido instructor that I had, he was an Armenian guy, but he lived in Korea for a long time, and he was a young dude, really attitude, ego, and this, that. But you made a mistake, he's beating you with a bamboo stick. It was like that kind of hardcore training. You got to do it, or you're getting hurt. And that groomed me to work with other trainers, that were a little bit harder to deal with, and that really taught me a lot. There's a lot of ego in the dog sport. And so, you got to learn how to deal with it, or walk away, and you become less because you didn't learn what they had to teach you. And I've learned a lot from a lot of different people.
Yeah. I've seen your stuff. I mean, it's interesting to see that component of bringing that prey balance into that defensive balance, into that aggression and all that, and mixing that, because I think without mixing it, you just don't have a dog that's capable of doing it. I mean, you can have a great pet. But I mean, if you're going to send a dog off to war And I mean, that's a real concern of mine, is I think these people look at the dogs and they baby the dogs and do this and that. But where I think these dogs they're going to war, just like our kids.
Right.
You know, they go in the military. They need to learn to, you know, get off the couch and put the video game console down.
Absolutely.
and take an insult or two without being, you know, doing coloring books in the corner of the room.
Right.
So what's the future for you? I mean, you're a young guy still, but like how long can you hold out with
good looks for you?
How long can you hold out doing this? I mean, I know some of these guys are 70, 75 still doing it. What do you think?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my workout. I'll put the suit on and I'll work 8-10 dogs, and I'll sweat literally. I'll lose about 10 pounds in an evening, and you know, and I feel great the next day. I never felt better. So I'll keep doing it till I can't do it. I don't like doing the long sends as much, you know, those straight, you know, skeeves and leg, you know, pivots and all that stuff, because I need my knees, and I don't know. I'm just not that great at it. I could catch a dog, but I'm more of a close quarter combat kind of person, and building character and courage and strength in the dog.
You ever get bit?
Oh yeah, I got scars everywhere. I got a video I can send you.
Can we put it on the show?
Yeah,
on the podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
With the scars and everything. Yeah.
All right, send it to me. We'll put it on.
Yeah, it's usually a handler error.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, well, or a good dog.
Yeah, right.
You know the story about that Lou always told about Reavers, and he got bit in the chest.
Oh yeah.
And Lou pulled him off in Reavers. And he goes,
the Reaver's been bit everywhere. The guy's a giant scar. I think.
What a legend.
He's a beast. I hope to meet him someday.
Yeah, I invited him to be on the podcast. I never heard back from him. And Lou's dead now, so we can't get Lou on. So that sucks. But anyway, thanks for going on the show, and I hope you come back.
Oh,
good conversation.
Thanks for having me.
First podcast. It was
for both of us.
Yeah, really. I mean, first one. I've done a lot of lives, but actually having you here makes it a lot more fun. So thanks for being here. And
nice seeing you.
See you, man. See you soon.